Well, folks, with the Democrat Party at a historical disadvantage, a historical structural disadvantage in the 2026 Senate elections, they could be banking on one big play, one insane move by Democrats to win the Senate in 2026. They are desperate at this point to win back the upper chamber from the Republican Party. Now, Democrats banking on one big thing, and her name is Senator Lisa Murkowski of the state of Alaska. And today, we are going to be discussing Democrats' insane move, the insane move that they could use to win back the Senate in 2026. So let's dive into it. But right now, Republicans currently hold an advantage in the House of Representatives with 220 seats to Democrats' 215 seats. While in the Senate, Republicans also hold an advantage of 53 seats to 45 seats, plus the two independents who caucus with the Democrat Party. Now, going into the 2026 Senate elections, we know Democrats are at a structural disadvantage, a serious disadvantage going into this election right here. You can see that Democrats are stuck defending many vulnerable seats, while Republicans have one, maybe two vulnerable seats that they're going to have to defend in the 2026 Senate election. And even if Republicans have a bad night, they are still projected to win the Senate at the end of the day. The betting markets are very clear. They believe that the Republicans will hold the Senate at the end of the 2026 Senate elections. Look, even if Democrats hold in the vulnerable state of Michigan, they hold in Georgia with Jon Ossoff, they flip in North Carolina, and they flip, let's say, a state like Maine. They're still at a disadvantage. They only win 49 seats. They still need to pierce somewhere else. And the reality is they're probably not going to win in Maine. We've talked about this a lot on our channel. I do not believe that Democrats they don't have someone. Janet Mills, the soon-to-be former governor, is the only person that could really run in this race who could make it close, in my opinion, as of right now. There's this independent who's coming out who's going to run in the Democrat Party who, is trying to be like this Dan Osborne 2.0. We're going to see what happens. I'm not very optimistic that Democrats are going to win back the seat from Susan Collins. Look, she's been winning in this seat in the state of Maine for decades. She's been doing this before, like most people who are probably listening to this could vote or were even alive, to be honest with you. She has been winning in the state of Maine since 1996. She won her initial election back in 1996. Well, Bill Clinton was elected in that same year. And so I am not really worried that she's going to win at the end of the day. But Democrats, they need to win somewhere else. Where else could they win if they want to get to the majority? They need to look at places like Ohio, where now former Senator Sherrod Brown is running in the state of Ohio. But the reality is that Democrats are so out of touch with voters in the state of Ohio that they're not going to win. Until Democrats learn to win back the working class vote, the white working class voters, they're simply just not going to win in the state of Ohio. And the same thing could be true for Alaska. Now, ranked choice voting could mess with that a little bit. But what do Democrats need? Democrats need to win in the state of North Carolina. Right now, these are the toss-up states: Michigan, Georgia, North Carolina, Maine. I'm not even going to say Alaska because it's not yet. Democrats need to hold in Michigan. They need to hold in Georgia. They need to flip in North Carolina with now the former governor Roy Cooper, who is running in 2026. Obviously, Tom Tillis is not going to run for re-election. Michael Whately appears to be the Republican nominee, or the de facto nominee as of right now, going into the 2026 Senate elections. Democrats would also have to flip in a place like Maine. They would have to beat Susan Collins, who, remember, not that long ago, just 6 years ago, or I should say it's about 5.5 years ago now, was projected to lose by roughly 4 or 5 points in the 2020 Senate election in Maine. She ended up beating her opponent at that time, Sarah Gideon, the Democrat, by roughly 9 percentage points. So I really have a hard time seeing Democrats winning in Maine, but they would need to do that. They need to win in Maine plus one more. They need to pierce in Ohio. They need to pierce maybe in Iowa. Could they pierce in Alaska? Could they pierce in Nebraska? I don't know. I don't know, but they would need to pierce one of these for this to become a reality. But I feel like the most likely out of the three is probably if Mary Peltola runs in Alaska and wins a tight election based, a ranked choice vote in election. That is the most likely of all scenarios for Democrats to get to a 50-50 Senate. And that's where a very interesting storyline comes into play. And that is the idea of Lisa Murkowski leaving the Republican Party to caucus with the Democrat Party. Now, she is leaving the door open to caucus with Democrats if Democrats manage to produce enough midterm upsets to get to a 50-50 tie in 2027. She says that the Alaska Republican is serious about putting her state first and takes pride in practical wins for her state. And she'll buck her party when it is 100% necessary. Now, she called caucusing with Democrats as an independent, interesting hypothetical, but added that she has plenty of disagreements with Senate Majority Chuck Schumer. And that's the big reality here is, look, even if she were to caucus with the Democrat Party, there would be a lot of things she would still vote against the Democrat Party with. Like, let's just be real about this. And she says in a book that is coming out here soon, I call myself a Republican because of the values I hold, such as personal responsibility, small government, and strong national defense, and the individual rights to make her own choices. But the reality is that this could happen. There's been many people who have been discussing this for years that Lisa Murkowski could potentially switch. We know there's been a big rift between Lisa Murkowski, the Republican Party, President Donald Trump, for years at this point. Remember, she voted against Brett Kavanaugh back in, 2018. She voted to convict President Trump in 2021. After the riot at the Capitol. There's been plenty of disagreements with the Republican Party voting against bucking the party at the end of the day. But if she were to do that, she would hand Democrats a victory in the state of Alaska, which would give Democrats a 51-49 majority and would allow them to be in the majority. Now, although, yes, would she vote with the Democrats every time? No, absolutely not. But the amount of control and power that the Senate Majority Leader in the party that is in the majority in the Senate has would make all the difference. We know that the Majority Party, through the Senate Majority Leader, sets the legislative calendar and determines which bills, resolutions, and nominations are prioritized for debate and voting. The Majority Leader has significant influence over scheduling of floor time and deciding when legislation reaches the floor, if it ever reaches that. Remember, they also have a lot of control over committee leadership and the members who are in that committee. The Majority Party chairs all Senate committees and subcommittees, allowing them to shape the direction of the hearings, investigations, and legislative markups. And the majority holds more seats on each committee, giving them a greater voting power to advance or block legislation within each individual committee. And you want to go to nominating, confirmation processes, leadership roles within the Senate, influence on the budget and reconciliation. We know they have to go through the appropriations process every September. Okay, you need 60 votes to overcome a filibuster here. Access to simply just the resources. Larger budgets for staffs, office space, resources, enabling better support for their legislative activities. Like, there's big implications, not only in the sense that could they pass certain bills or they may not pass certain bills, but the fact that they would so much control over the actual logistical side of the Senate. When you're looking at resources, influence on the budget and reconciliation, leadership roles, nominations and confirmation processes, procedural advantages, committee and leadership advantages in the membership, and control over the Senate agenda. That is just a reality at the end of the day. But this is so kind of far off in certain worlds, but so close in certain worlds too. Remember, Chuck Schumer has been courting many different people to run in the Senate in 2026. He's been courting Mary Peltola to run in Alaska. Remember, she was the congresswoman who won a upset election back in 2022. A very close election based on ranked choice voting. Chuck Schumer is trying to get her to run. He believes she's the only Democrat who can win statewide in the state of Alaska. Pile on top of that, he has two massive wins he is coming off of. Number one was with the former Democrat governor of North Carolina, Roy Cooper. Chuck Schumer was able to court him, get him to run in the 2026 Senate elections. He is now running for the open Senate seat in North Carolina. Remember, this is the seat that Tom Tillis will vacate when he retires in early 2027. Republicans look like they're going to nominate Michael Whately to go up against him. But also, he's coming off another big victory with Sherrod Brown in the state of Ohio. Sherrod Brown, he was the former senator from the state of Ohio, was elected back in 2006 during Barack Obama's second midterm. Brown won the state of Ohio, actually beat the now incumbent governor of Ohio, Mike DeWine, by roughly 13 points. He wanted to serve 3 terms in the Senate, win a re-election in 2012 by 6 points, and win a re-election in 2018 by 6 and almost 7 percentage points in the state of Ohio. It was a very, very close and very long tenure that he had in Ohio. He was very much known for his populist appeal and his working class appeal. But at the end of the day, he fell too much in line with the National Democrat Party. He lost his brand of being a Midwest working class Democrat. He lost that brand. He really did. And that's why he got ousted in 2024 when Bernie Moreno, the now senator from the state of Ohio, beat Sherrod Brown by roughly 3.5 percentage points. Yes, did Bernie Moreno run behind the top of the ticket with President Trump in Ohio winning by 11.5 points? Yes, he did. We knew it was going to be much closer in Ohio on the Senate side than on the presidential side. But still, he was able to beat a three-term incumbent. Similar things happened in the state of Pennsylvania with Dave McCormick. We saw Dave McCormick oust longtime Senator Bob Casey from the state of Pennsylvania. Just absolutely insane. Bob Casey obviously won back in 2006 alongside Sherrod Brown. Were both ousted in 2024 by really, really tight margins in this election. Now, if Democrats were able to get to a point where they win North Carolina, where they win Maine, and they win one of Alaska, Iowa, Ohio, or Nebraska. If they can win one of those, they can poach one of them. She would be the tipping point. She would be the tipping point for the Democrats to be able to control the Senate agenda, control committee leadership. And most likely, that could give Democrats control over both chambers in Congress. We know that Democrats probably, historically speaking, they probably have a 60% chance of winning the House in 2026. Could Republicans buck trends? Absolutely. But where we are right now, I think you could say it's probable that Democrats could win the House of Representatives. But the Senate, that's a whole other ballgame that we're looking at here. And Murkowski could be the tipping point. But the big thing is when it actually comes down to legislation, would she vote with the Democrat Party at the end of the day? Is she a Democrat? No. Lisa Murkowski is not a Democrat at the end of the day. Let's just get one thing clear. She may say that labels don't matter, but at the end of the day, her values, her conservative values, lead her to believe that she believes much more in personal values, personal responsibility, small government, strong national defense, individual rights. Those are baselines in her belief system. And yes, she would probably vote with the Democrat Party when it came to abortion rights, when it came to LGBTQ plus rights, that she most likely would. She would support legislation like the Respect for Marriage Act, which codified same-sex marriage in the United States. She probably would vote with Democrats on infrastructure and climate initiatives and judicial nominees. She seems to side with the Democrats much more when it comes to judicial and cabinet appointments than the Republican Party. And then, of course, Alaska-specific priorities. She has always been this way. She has always been able to cross the aisle to deliver for Alaska. Look, she has crossed the aisle to fund Native communities and rural infrastructure with Democrats. And if Democrats offered a bill to pass that would benefit Alaska, whether it was disaster relief or tribal support, she'd most likely vote with them. And she has indicated this openness in details for years, I say. But at the end of the day, she would still vote with the Republican Party on a lot of big issues like energy and resource development. We know she's been a staunch advocate for oil and gas drilling in Alaska, notably securing the 2017 legislation opening the Arctic National Wildlife Refuge to lease sales so they can drill oil. Obviously, that was against Democrat opposition. She's most likely going to vote with Republican parties to protect fossil fuel industries, a cornerstone of the Alaska economy. Look, they're similar to like Alberta. They are extremely a resource-driven economy, and oil is their research. And I guess you could also say her fiscal and economic policy, she would still vote with the Republican Party. Well, I guess she's been very critical of the dysfunction in the GOP. Murkowski's values align much more closely with the Republican Party on fiscal policies like tax cuts, limited government spending, compared to Democrat proposals for expansive social programs. She's expressed a lot of concerns about Democrat policies that she inherently would disagree with. Talk about the Second Amendment. Talk about Senate seniority and committee influence. I think she would still expect to maintain her seniority on the Senate Appropriations Committee and her role as the chair of the Interior subcommittees. She'd probably still vote with the Republican Party on foreign policy and national security. So there's a lot of things she would still vote with the Republican Party, and this would not just, we all of a sudden have a Democrat who's going to vote 96% of the time with the Democrat Party. She would still vote a lot with the Republican Party at the end of the day. But I think it just shows there is a serious rift between President Trump, between the Republican Party, and some more establishment, George W. Bush era Republicans that You should say more establishment Republicans that simply are still in the Senate right now. But could this actually happen? Could Lisa Murkowski actually leave the Republican Party and caucus with the Democrats? Look, do I think it's very possible she could leave and become an independent? Absolutely. Might she caucus with the Democrats? Maybe. Maybe she would just be an independent. Maybe she won't caucus with anyone. At the end of the day, she has a lot of conservative values that she would have to go against if she were to caucus with the Democrat Party. Remember, this is something that's been talked about for years, and she's shut it down in the past, and it makes me think that she would probably just shut it down again. But it has come up time and time again, and I think that there should be, some thought behind it, that maybe that's a risk for the Republican Party in 2026. But the reality is I don't think Democrats are actually going to win all of these seats. Look, I don't think they're going to win in Maine at the end of the day. I think they could win in North Carolina, sure. Do I think that they're going to flip Alaska? Probably not, even though it looks like Peltola could run. There's kind of been back and forth information. Is she going to run? Is she not going to run? We don't know. Democrats would have to poach a lean or a likely or safe Republican seat in order for this to be a reality. Ohio, Iowa, or Alaska. It would just have to happen. But the reality is, it's such a big political move. I have a hard time seeing it happen. Look, she's toyed with this in the past, and then she shut it down. Toyed with it in the past and shut it down. Who's to say this is going to be any different this time? But folks, that is going to wrap things up for today. This is Democrats' insane move to win the Senate in the 2026 Senate elections by using Lisa Murkowski to caucus with the Democrat Party if they were able to get to a 50-50 Senate. If Democrats were able to poach, let's say, North Carolina, they'd have to poach Maine, or they have to poach, really, at the end of the day, they have to poach 3 out of these 4. Look, they need to poach Maine. They need to poach, I should say 2 out of these 5, or 3 if you're looking at these seats where Democrats could go to. Look, you have 6 seats here. They need to poach 3 of them. They got to get 3 of them at the end of the day. Don't think it's going to happen here. Probably not going to happen here. Could it happen in Ohio? Maybe. Unlikely. I think at the end of the day, it's very unlikely that we get to this situation. But this is something that I believe Democrats are going to start to try and lay the groundwork for. If they really think that they could win, if they really think that they have an opportunity at the end of the day to take control of the Senate, to take control of the House, what could they offer Lisa Murkowski in order to get her to caucus with the Democrat Party? But folks, that's going to wrap things up for today. As always, folks, drop down below, hit that subscribe button. Make sure you never miss another video from us again in the future. And folks, we will catch you next time.